Tonight, anguish turns to anger. Families of the passengers desperate for answers and overwhelmed.
It's like a dream. I hope it's fake.
From grief in Ethiopia to confusion for Canadian travelers.
Doesn't matter, I'll probably have to veto.
U.S. senators turn against Trump, yes, even Republicans. How the border wall became a loyalty test for the president.
I'm terrified by this stuff.
And how superbugs could wind up in your shrimp. A CBC Marketplace investigation. This is The National.
Answers, the hunt for them, the desperate need for them, perhaps the one thing everyone can agree on after the Ethiopian Airlines crash. And we're getting closer. As airlines in Canada scramble to rebook thousands of passengers affected by the grounding of 737 MAX 8 planes, French investigators are starting their search for answers here. This is one of the flight recorders that was on the crashed jet. If they can retrieve the data, we'll know what was happening with the plane and being said in the cockpit as it fell to earth. And at that point of impact today, pain. One woman so distraught over who she lost on this ground. Mixed with that grief, anger. In Ethiopia, some victims' families incensed at the airline, saying they're not getting enough information. Among those with questions, a mother and daughter who live in Canada. They spoke to our Susan Ormiston on a day full of emotion.
The families are all staying here at the Skylight Hotel, owned by Ethiopian Airlines. And this morning, they were invited to a private briefing. It ended badly, with families yelling at the CEO and his staff because they say they're not getting what they desperately want, timely access to their relatives' remains.
What are they telling you?
They speak anything, they speak nothing. They speak everything, it's a government thing.
Then an official ended it. Emotions are intense at the crash site as well. Mostly Ethiopians visiting today. And in the absence of funerals or other rituals, they say, the pain feels worse. They want to reclaim something of their loved ones from this place, but DNA matching will take time, and a UK company has barely begun the work, leaving so many at loss. Like Alison Wong of Vernon, BC, and her mother Haley.
So many victims' families are stuck in here. We all want to know the exact timeline.
Alison lost her dad, Jack Wong.
I know it will be so hard to do the DNA because it's 1,000 pieces. I don't know. It's very hard to do this. But at least I let us know 1 month. Just give us a time. But we didn't get nothing from them.
Yesterday, Alison and her mum traveled out to that site. Did it give you any comfort, Haley, to be out there?
每当闭上眼睛的时候，他会在我的周围来回旋转，什么也不说，只是看一看而已。
So she always think my dad is around her to support her all the time.
And how did you feel?
I just feel everything is like a dream. I hope it's fake, but I have to accept the truth. I have to be calm down because I don't want my mom to worry.
There's plenty of worry. Before this crash, her father was just about to get permanent residency for his family in Canada. He needed one last document from Kenya, which is why he was on that plane.
When we dropped him in the airport in Kelowna, he just said, just wait for me 4 or 5 days. And after that, we come back and we celebrate. That is the last words he said.
Tonight, at the Holy Savior, one of the first church memorials, in a week which has consumed the capital. 157 candles and roses, one for each lost soul. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Addis Ababa.
Another victim of that crash, Canadian Danielle Moore, is being honored around the world tonight, including in Toronto.
Be free. I want Daniel's life
and memory goes on.
Her parents attended this sunset ritual. Ones like it were planned in communities across Canada and as far away as Zambia, Mexico, and New Zealand. Friends say that's a reflection of the impact the 24-year-old had on others. She was an environmentalist and human rights activist and was on her way to the UN Environment Assembly when she died. Many of those mourning the 157 lives lost are asking why. And key to providing some of the answers can be found in the plane's black boxes, which, as we showed you, arrived this morning in Paris for analysis. In the meantime, the Boeing ban is in full effect, and the scope of the impact is being felt across this country, with more than 60 Air Canada and WestJet flights canceled today alone, affecting more than 10,000 travelers. Katie Simpson has more on the challenge for passengers as MAX 8s continue to sit idle at airports.
I'm just going to see what's available.
Travel agents are on the front line of the Boeing MAX mess. This Toronto flight center is fielding twice as many calls as normal.
Unfortunately, it's one of the busiest travel times for us in Canada because of March break. You know, it's going a lot smoother than we anticipated.
Travelers scheduled to fly on the Boeing planes are being rebooked as quickly as possible, and at least one airline is planning for this to continue until the end of the month. In a letter to staff, Air Canada's CEO wrote, "Although we have no way of knowing how long these aircraft will be grounded, for now, we are canceling all flights on our Boeing 737 MAX fleet for the next 3 weeks."
We've just been stuck here waiting, because we're flying standby too. So we've just been waiting for like open seats kind of thing.
Riley Calderbank is trying to get home from his Hawaiian vacation with his family.
They're trying to fit everybody on these like other smaller planes, so we'll see how that works out.
Some passengers have been told it may take days to reach their destination as airlines try to rebook tens of thousands of passengers.
They have large fleets at Air Canada, particularly and at WestJet, so they can move planes around, existing planes, and use some smaller planes for some of the routes or bigger ones, and move the planes around.
This professor says the initial shock will wear off once the March break rush ends.
I would encourage Canadians to be a bit patient with Air Canada and WestJet because it's not their fault the plane's grounded.
And that certainly was the sentiment today at Canada's largest airport.
Safety is always first thing, right? I mean, they've had 2 crashes already, so you got to do their due diligence, make sure everybody's safe.
Transport Canada is asking the Canadian companies that fly the Boeing planes to submit their contingency plans. Air Canada, WestJet, and Sunwing must outline their rebooking policies and what they're going to do for their 737 MAX pilots who now have nothing to fly. A government official says all 3 are cooperating. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Ottawa.
And so the big question, when will the 737s take off again? Well, that won't happen until upgrades to flight control software approved, installed, and tested, which U.S. authorities today say could take a couple of months. Boeing is making fixes to the plane's automated anti-stall system that's suspected of contributing to the deadly crashes. So lots of uncertainty for airlines, pilots, and of course, Adrian, passengers over the next few weeks.
That's okay, I look a lot like her. And Ian, there's global uncertainty too over what will happen next with Brexit. Britain is supposed to leave the European Union in just 15 days now. Prime Minister Theresa May has cajoled, threatened, and pleaded for a deal to make that happen, to no avail. MPs don't agree on much, but today they finally agreed on something, stalling for time. As Thomas Degla tells us, many call that an act of desperation.
The Brexit clock has been ticking for 2 years.
728 days.
100 days away.
Just 15 days to go.
A countdown to departure day.
Order.
Like a constant reminder of Britain hurtling toward the unknown. Now, the exit looks further away than expected.
In politics, I think you have to occasionally do what you think is the right thing.
Guto Beb quit as a minister over the government's handling of Brexit. Today, he called for a timeout.
In terms of making sure that we don't crash out with a no-deal scenario, it's that extension that we need.
The House of Commons considered that Brexit delay after a week of high drama.
And I'd ask people, how many of them would have voted for this dog's Brexit?
Yet another snub of the government's initial plan.
The Prime Minister has lost all control.
Theresa May conspicuously silent. She lost her voice, her grip on power at risk too. May's Brexit point man laid out what's left of the government's vision.
It is time for this House to act in the national interest. It is time to put forward an extension that is realistic.
MPs agreed Britain should ask the EU to postpone the breakup.
The ayes to the right, 412. The noes to the left, 202.
The vote's result drew no cheers, just silence.
I don't honestly think if we haven't achieved agreement within 2 years, that in frankly a matter of weeks, maybe months, we're going to achieve anything different.
Tonight, the Prime Minister headed home, her country now likely strapped to the EU for a while longer. Nothing settled, only stalled.
So, Thomas, it doesn't seem like this delay has helped with the uncertainty or the confusion surrounding Brexit at all.
Now, all the delay does is clarify what happens next a little bit. Now, the Prime Minister can go to Brussels next week and request a delay for 3 months or longer. She still intends to come back to Parliament next week and put her divorce deal to yet another vote, hoping third time's a charm. And that strategy could force hardline Brexiters to choose between her deal, which they don't like, and the risk of a long Brexit delay or the threat of Brexit never materializing at all. This is all beginning to look like a game of chicken, Rosemary, and it could still backfire.
Hard to see what happens next. Thanks, Thomas. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Turning to the U.S., President Donald Trump's own long-running game of chicken over his border wall. Today, senators opposed to his national emergency declaration had a chance to smack it down, and they did not blink. Now, Democrats have long opposed President Trump on his border wall strategy, but as Paul Hunter explains, today's Senate vote suggests his bedrock of Republican support could be cracking.
The yeas are 59, the nays are 41. The joint resolution is passed.
Do the math, and for Donald Trump, it's a stinging slapdown. U.S. senators today voting to rebuke the president. Among them, yes, Democrats.
The fact is that the president is trying to rewrite the Constitution.
But as well, and more to the point, fully 12 Republicans.
This, for me, is a matter of defending the Constitution and the balance of power.
At the center of it, that border wall. Today's vote was aimed at blocking Trump's declaration of a national emergency along the U.S. border with Mexico. It's Trump's way to free up billions of dollars to build a longer wall. Lawmakers oppose that because under the U.S. Constitution, it's Congress, not the president, with control of public spending.
Do we want the executive branch now or in the future to hold the power of the purse?
I'll probably have to veto.
In trying to build the wall regardless, Trump today pledged he'll keep at it, offering a rare one-word tweet about that Senate vote. Veto. Promising for the first time in his presidency to now overrule Congress, though even that won't settle things with the expectation this will all end up in the courts eventually, maybe for years.
One thing I think is pretty clear, it's inarguably a presidential power grab.
But for many, it's the Senate vote itself that matters most. Trump had framed it as a test of loyalty, and that so many Republicans on an issue so close to his heart had failed to line up lockstep behind him may well signal that for Donald Trump, more setbacks could now loom. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Okay, Andrew, let's turn now to a marketplace investigation.
Yeah, and this one's for anyone who enjoys the odd shrimp cocktail or seafood linguine. Much of the shrimp consumed in this country comes from overseas, and some of it may contain dangerous bacteria. David Common shows us what he found and how.
Product of Vietnam. This one is from India. Let's get an organic one.
We randomly tested supermarket shrimp imported from India, China, Vietnam, and Thailand, and took them to microbiologist Joe Rubin.
What we're looking for are different types of antibiotic-resistant bacteria.
Many had bacteria like E. coli, and in almost 1 in 5, what they found was resistant to common antibiotics, so-called superbugs. 3 of the samples were ESBL.
That allows them to break down antibiotics.
ESBL is almost like an antibiotic killer?
That's not a bad way of thinking about it.
Most of Canada's shrimp comes from Asia, where antibiotics are often used to control bacteria in shrimp ponds. But there's worldwide concern that practice increases the risk the bacteria will adapt and become resistant to antibiotics.
The challenge that we have to deal with now is that those countries don't have the same regulations that we do.
So that sounds a bit like a backdoor.
That's correct. That's the challenge that we have.
Jerry Wright is perhaps Canada's foremost authority on antibiotic resistance.
What would be a really good idea is to prevent them from getting in the first place.
Canada does not allow antibiotic use on any shrimp, imported or otherwise. But Marketplace learned Canada's Food Inspection Agency isn't even testing for superbugs on our shrimp. Instead, it's been testing for antibiotic residue. And now industry insiders tell us that direct testing is itself being reduced in favor of seafood importers doing more of their own testing.
It's a gap. They need to close the gap. This is a growing problem around the world. We need to come to grips with it, and we need to get on top of it. Problem right now is that other than your little study, we don't know.
So what should happen now? We asked the federal health minister. Is it your commitment to look into the issue of what is on our shrimp being imported into this country?
I am absolutely committed to make sure that I get in touch with our CFIA officials to find out exactly what is being done in this area, and then from there making sure that we ensure that Canada's food supply is safe for all Canadians.
Cooking can kill many superbugs, but there's also the risk of cross-contamination. Take a look at where we detected it in this test kitchen using luminescent gel. Get that bacteria on your food and inside of you. The common antibiotics used to fight your next infection may not work.
Okay, so David, should people, avoid eating shrimp, or can they do something to protect themselves?
So I'm still eating shrimp even after knowing all the things that I now know, but cook it thoroughly. If you're buying raw shrimp, make sure it's cooked straight through. That doesn't take very long. In terms of preparation, treat it like raw chicken. So wash your hands very thoroughly afterwards, touch nothing in between.
And on antibiotic resistance, I mean, should people be worried about other seafood or other food generally?
Yeah, there are other foods where antibiotics are used and are used legally. So chicken and beef, for instance, in this country, it's reduced now because they're trying to ward off antibiotic resistance as these bugs become better and better and adapt against the antibiotics we have. Places like chicken and beef farms are reducing significantly the amount of antibiotics they use, but they are out there, and we are marching sort of towards a problem probably in 10 or 20 years.
Very interesting stuff, David. Thanks so much. And David, we'll have a lot more on this tomorrow night. You can watch the full Marketplace investigation on CBC Television starting at 8 p.m., 8:30 in Newfoundland.
Here are some of the other stories we're following tonight, beginning with a developing story in Tel Aviv. Rocket warning sirens were heard across the city as tensions in the region rise. The Israeli military says Palestinian militants fired 2 rockets at Tel Aviv, the first time they've reached the area in 5 years. No damage or injuries were reported. Israel confirmed it launched airstrikes in response aimed at targets in the Gaza Strip.
I'm relieved that at least one soldier who's responsible for those actions is going to be prosecuted.
A former British soldier is facing 2 murder charges in connection to Northern Ireland's Bloody Sunday killings. The accused, identified only as Soldier F, will also be charged with 4 counts of attempted murder. In January of 1972, British soldiers shot 13 people dead and wounded 14 others during a Catholic civil rights protest. And Nigerian officials have suspended their search a day after the collapse of a school building. At least 8 people were killed. That number is feared to rise. An unknown number remain missing. There are now questions about why the building was in use in the first place. It had been marked for demolition by Nigerian authorities.
Still ahead on tonight's National, it's Thursday, and At Issue is here. Their take on the opposition outrage on the SNC-Lavalin affair.
Less than a day now, the long-awaited Mueller report will be done, but the public may not get to see all of it. We'll explain why.
But next, what researchers are learning about babies in their first few days of life.
I don't think we really appreciated the staggering number of changes that are occurring.
First
First off, let's get the term straight. Impeachment is commonly misunderstood to mean the removal of a president from office, but it's actually the process, not the result. So, how hard is it to impeach a president? Pretty hard, and that's by design. So, how does it happen? First, a sitting president needs to be formally accused of something seriously shady. In the Constitution, that's treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. Next, the House of Representatives drafts and debates the charges and evidence, known as the Articles of Impeachment, and if a majority of the House votes to accept the case, the president is impeached. Now, stuff gets real, with a high-profile trial in the Senate. The president retains his or her own lawyers, the House Judiciary Committee acts as the prosecution, the Senate is the jury, there are witnesses and cross-examinations, and the whole thing is presided over by the Chief Justice of the United States. Sound like an episode of Law & Order? While impeachment proceedings may feel like a criminal trial, it's purely political. A conviction here won't land you in jail, but if 2/3 of senators decide, you will be kicked out of office with no appeal. Here's a trivia fun fact. No U.S. president has ever been removed from office via impeachment. Wait, you say? What about this guy, and this guy? Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton were impeached but were acquitted by the Senate. And Nixon, he resigned before it could happen. Side note, impeachment is not just for presidents. The U.S. House has also impeached 19 individuals, 15 federal judges, and 1 cabinet member. To summarize, impeachment is the political process of removing from office certain public officers accused of wrongdoing. The House impeaches, and the Senate conducts the trial. But if House representatives are in sync with voters, they're also going to take a good hard look at popular opinion before setting things in motion. Remember, a ton of people voted the president in.
The first few days of a newborn's life are so important, and yet doctors haven't really known much about what was actually happening biologically in that critical time. Well, that's changing. Here's Cass Rusi now with what new research has revealed and how it could mean big things for babies' health.
The first week of a newborn's life is fragile and potentially deadly.
A large proportion of childhood mortality is newborn mortality. And there's a lot that we don't know about neonatal immunology.
Researchers looked at 2 groups of them in different parts of the world. 60 babies, half from Gambia in West Africa, the other half from Papua New Guinea, were recruited. Researchers compared 2 tiny blood samples, less than 1/4 of a teaspoon from each newborn, at birth and again later in the first week. What they saw were dramatic biological changes. Genes and immune cells were activated. Proteins were being produced.
I don't think we really appreciated the staggering number of changes that are occurring.
Bob Hancock's team at the University of British Columbia performed the blood work. They pioneered the technique that got so much data from such a small sample.
We saw an increase in their ability to resist infections, which is the biggest threat to an infant during that first week of life.
Without having a really good idea of what's normal for a baby in the first week of life, it's very difficult to design strategies to try to help these babies do better.
But the research could give doctors new ways to protect newborns in those early days, including more specific testing done at birth to determine which baby may get sick. It could also provide clues on when babies should be vaccinated.
We'd really like to know more about whether we can actually start doing those vaccinations even earlier in the infants to give them a better chance of fighting off the devastating diseases that vaccines protect against.
Hoping to provide the most vulnerable with a fighting chance early on in their lives. Cass Rusi, CBC News, Toronto.
Still to come, At Issue looks ahead to Tuesday's Budget Day and what's next in the SNC-Lavalin controversy.
Plus, 2 years after a blizzard stranded hundreds of Quebec motorists, the provincial government agrees to pony up.
It's a great day. It's a great day for the little person. It's a great day for the people of Montreal. I'm extremely happy. I think it's something that we should all be proud of.
Most people had never heard of NXIVM until this happened.
Allison Mack. She has been charged with sex trafficking.
The FBI arrested the group's leader, as well as Allison Mack. Over several months, a number of charges were laid, including sex trafficking, forced labor, and racketeering conspiracy. And all hell broke loose.
Mack was with the alleged cult leader when he was arrested in Mexico.
NXIVM has been called a terrifying cult, a sex cult, a pyramid scheme, and even a group bent on world domination. But what is NXIVM? Here's the story of the group's rise and fall. NXIVM started in 1998 in Albany, New York, and it claims to be a self-improvement group, and it helps people with their issues and to gain success. The ultimate goal is to achieve an enlightened state, something that's called fully integrated. So far, of course, the group's leader is the only one who's achieved that state. It's also a multi-level marketing company. People pay money to take courses, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, and you can make money by getting other people to sign up. The group has attracted rich and famous people, including heiresses Sarah and Claire Bronfman, Smallville actresses Allison Mack and Kristen Kruk, and Hawaii Five-0 actress Grace Park, though Kruk and Park have since left. But some former members say the group is actually centered on the appetites and powers of the group's leader, Keith Raniere, who the NXIVM faithful call Vanguard. If you want to understand NXIVM, you have to try and understand Keith Raniere.
Our main belief is to have people experience more joy in their lives.
This is him talking about NXIVM.
And from that, all sorts of interesting effects appear to happen.
So according to Raniere, he's one of the smartest people in the world. He claims to have an IQ of 240. He says he has 147 patents. He has degrees in math, biology, and physics. He has a minor in psychology and philosophy, and he's an expert in computer science. He's written 2 books, one with a foreword from the Dalai Lama. NXIVM isn't the first multi-level marketing scheme that Raniere started. In 1990, he started something called Consumers Byline, which is essentially a discount shopping club. It was shut down, though Raniere did not admit any fault. A few years later, he started NXIVM.
I'm very devilish, and I think I'm probably the worst coach in the world because I'm just a demon.
NXIVM claims to be a self-help group, but according to some people that left, that's not the whole story. Some people say that after they left, NXIVM went after them in the courts for speaking out. And some of the most serious allegations in the FBI indictments have to do with a secret group linked to NXIVM called DOS. Some of the women who joined DOS say they believed it was a secret group for women's empowerment. DOS is an acronym for the Latin phrase Dominus Obsequious Sororium, which loosely translates to master over the slave women. In DOS, you were called a slave and you served under your master. And if you recruited others, you became their master. In order to join, women had to give over collateral to prove they were committed. Some women gave nude photos or taped confessions of damaging secrets. If they quit, some people feared their collateral would be released. And in what many people find the strangest part, in the initiation ceremony, women got branded. One woman says that she only found out at the ceremony that the design would be burned into her skin. She left NXIVM after she realized that the design appeared to include the initials of KR for Keith Raniere and AM for Allison Mack. The FBI says that some of the women in DOS were being instructed to have sex with Raniere. Since the story broke, NXIVM has suspended all activities, and Raniere and Mack have pleaded not guilty. But some former members are worried about what will happen next, and if the company will still come after them. Check out the complete podcast, Escaping NXIVM, at cbc.ca/.
We are live on The National following the latest in the trial of former Donald Trump advisor Roger Stone. The longtime political confidant to the president will get his day in court November 5th. Trial was set for today by a federal judge who also cautioned Stone that he needed to comply with a gag order limiting his public comments on the case. Stone has denied any wrongdoing. In the wake of the U.S. college admissions scandal, the Hallmark Channel has announced it's severing ties with the Hollywood actress Lori Loughlin. It stopped production of 2 Vancouver-based projects because of the decision. The beauty chain Sephora also says it's ending its partnership with Loughlin's daughter, a social media influencer known as Olivia Jade. After initially refusing, Netflix now says it will remove images of Lac Mégantic from the film Bird Box. Footage of the disaster was used in the psychological thriller, a move that was met with outrage from the friends and families of the 47 people killed in the Quebec town. The streaming service issued an apology for any pain it caused.
Madame Lapointe, Mr. McKinnon.
What a shame.
What a shame. Cover up.
De quoi avez-vous peur?
Cover up.
No, it's a cover-up.
The committee's already expressed its wishes on March 6th to have this particular hearing on March 19th, so it's as simple as that.
What does this say to Canadians? That they have something to hide. If they didn't have something to hide, we would have had the debate.
They have done everything that they could to block and obstruct the ability of this committee to get to the truth.
So, strong words from the opposition parties after yesterday's emergency debate at the Justice Committee was cut short. Now their next meeting is set for Tuesday. That will happen behind closed doors. It just happens to be Budget Day next Tuesday. So what happens next in the SNC-Lavalin controversy? How will the government use, presumably, the budget to reset the agenda? It's Thursday, and that means it's at issue time. Everyone with me in studio in Toronto, where I am as well. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, and Andre Demise. Good to see everybody in person. So I want to talk about what happened in that committee this week, but also in terms of how the government may try to seize back the agenda with the budget. What did you make of the Liberal decision to shut down the idea of Jody Wilson-Raybould, for now anyway, coming back in front of that committee?
Yes, well, I mean, the line was, well, we're not shutting anything down, we're just postponing it to the regularly scheduled date. I guess I'm not clear why March 19th is the mandate date, other than it happens to be the day of the budget. So whatever decision they make, whether they call Jody Wilson-Raybould, whether they call any other witnesses, or whether, as I suspect, they call none of them, it'll get drowned out by the budget coverage, which I suspect was the intent. So no, shutting down that meeting last Wednesday wasn't the end of the world in that, but it certainly presaged, it seems to me, where they're headed.
It wasn't surprising, though, that they didn't want to put her back in that forum, was it? I mean, that they wanted to give her more time in that committee as the only witness. Is that surprising to you? I don't know.
Yes and no. Yes, because pressure and the consensus out there beyond the opposition parties was that she should be allowed to reply to the testimonies that others have given that don't seem to match hers. Right. Second, the notion, I'm not insulted by the fact that the meeting will take place on the day of the budget behind closed doors, because that meeting is going to be a meeting about the meeting. But if the intent were to say, yes, let's have her back, that makes very strange strategic sense, yes, because the Liberals would then be setting themselves up to overshadow their budget with a second Wilson-Raybould appearance. And if they, for a second, think that the budget will overshadow that, they really are miscalculating. So I'm assuming that they do not want her back, and I'm not sure that they can prevent her from speaking by just saying you can't come to our committee.
Well, so they take issue, the government says they take issue with the notion that they are being perceived as muzzling Jody Wilson-Raybould, that in fact she could speak anytime she wants to speak. She could speak to me, she could speak to you, she could hold a press conference.
That's entirely possible, but then the moment she does that and steps outside of the Justice Committee to have conversations with the press, I think what will happen to her will be more or less what happened to Selina Caesar-Chavannes, who went to the press, had a conversation about what her conversations were with the Prime Minister, and then she was essentially attacked by Liberal partisans online, social media, etc. So I don't really see how it makes any sense to have her go outside the venue where the questions are supposed to be answered, which is inside of that committee.
I mean, let's look at the larger context. The story broke February the 7th. Ms. Wilson-Raybould spoke to the committee on February 27th. We're now into the next week, into late March, and they're only now debating and considering whether to call her or whether to call other witnesses. This is not how the committee should be proceeding. This is the only forum we have to try to even notionally get to the bottom of this, since we're not apparently going to have a public inquiry. There are serious allegations that top-level officials in the government tried to interfere with a prosecution, a criminal prosecution, on serious charges of fraud and corruption. This is not acceptable. It's fine to say, well, she could speak elsewhere. She could also speak to the committee, and I have yet to hear a good reason why she shouldn't.
But 3 points. One, she did testify about her experience as Attorney General.
Yes.
So I'm not sure that there would be a lot to add to the interference issue from her time after she wasn't Attorney General. The first
Beyond
point.
the cabinet shuffle, which speaks to motivation, I guess.
Yes, but
yeah.
second point, for the Liberals, there would be an advantage in having her in committee because there are questions that they should be asking. They haven't been, and if they're serious, they would look a lot better asking tough questions than muzzling her or keeping her out of the committee. But I guess the third point is, for herself, there will come a point where she will have to reconcile her desire to remain a part of that team with whatever she wants to say about the person who leads it.
Right.
And so I'm guessing if she does go back and testify, there will be a line at some point that will be crossed where it will become impossible to commend this Prime Minister to voters in 6 months and at the same time to spend more time talking about how terrible he is.
But there's also elementary fairness. Michael Wernick got to testify twice, both before and after. Jerry Butts got to testify after the benefit of hearing her, so he would know where to direct his testimony. They both essentially implied that she was either lying or making things up, so she should be able to say her piece. But secondly, there's all kinds of other people I would like to hear from. Those two officials in the Prime Minister's office who apparently were talking to line prosecutors quite improperly, at least according to her testimony. I'd like to hear from them. Maybe it's not true.
Yes. Okay, and I will just for the record point out that I have asked to speak with her on numerous occasions and she has yet to accept. But I mean, she's had invitations, is my point, beyond the committee to say her piece, and maybe that's not the right venue, but there it is. So talk to me about the budget then and how you expect that to factor into all of this, because as we've talked about before, it was this time last year that they were getting over the India trip debacle, had a budget to sort of reset things. I think it appeared to work. Eric Renier's numbers show that things start to track back up after the budget anyway. Do they have to put all their eggs in the basket here in order to try and rebuild the narrative, or is the damage done?
I think the fact that we're even having this conversation shows, to me, it belies a level of cynicism that I think, I at least thought in Canadian politics that we were past that. So the idea that we're delaying the second appearance until the day of the budget, whether or not it overshadows, I don't think is really the question. The question is why couldn't we have settled one before we moved on to the other? Why couldn't we have settled this issue? As you pointed out, we've been dealing with this for over a month. This could have been squared away by now in the Justice Committee. So why are we stretching this into the budget period and having a conversation over if we're talking about the future of pharmacare in Canada, we're talking about getting young people into homes and trying to solve the housing crisis in this country. We're conflating that with an issue that was over a month old.
But are we conflating it, or are they trying to say these are the things that matter to us, so we want you to talk about those more?
I think if they wanted to get this squared away by then and then move on to the budget issues and the issues contained therein, they would have done so by now.
I think they think it is squared away. That's what I would argue. Yeah.
I'm not as persuaded as Chantal that Jody Wilson-Raybould would drown out the budget versus the other way around. I think the message the government will try to say is the opposition wants to talk scandal. We're talking about the real concerns of men and women in Canada. They've got several $billion in extra revenues, it looks like, because they lowballed the revenue numbers as usual. I suspect there'll be a lot of goodies in this budget, and we shall see. Maybe Chantal's right, but we shall see which takes precedence in news coverage.
The budget was always going to have lots of goodies in it because it's a pre-election budget. And it is fair game for the government to remind voters of other issues than Jody Wilson-Raybould and SNC-Lavalin, because when they make that choice in October, it's going to be on more than that.
So then we get to repeat at a national level what's already happened in Ontario, is that the government tries to paper over a scandal by dropping a whole bunch of goodies in the government.
I think
the opposition seizes on that, and then we spend 4 years undoing what was done.
Chantal, finish your point.
I don't think the government should forego presenting a budget.
Well, I'm not saying that.
Hang on. Let Chantal finish. Let Chantal finish.
If that's where we're going, I don't agree with that.
I'm not by any stretch saying that.
So the sheer presentation of a budget does not paper over. You're actually re-arguing my point. I believe that if she showed up the day after the budget would be forgotten and dropped from the headlines much more quickly than if she does not.
But do they need it more than they would have anyway, given it's a pre-electoral budget? I guess that's my question.
I've seen governments who were going into elections bring goodie budgets time and again, and in the end, if you're going to be re-elected, it usually is based on the character of the Prime Minister and not on some goodie budget that came 6 months before. Because remember those checks that Stephen Harper sent the entire summer. Philippe Couillard had nothing but with goodies at this time last year, and look where he is today, or where is he, by the way? Kathleen Wynne, how much papering over did she do? I don't know.
Well, there was no papering over done, but what's happening in Ontario is that some of the great items that were included in the last budget in the Wynne government are now being undone by the Ford government, which is likely what will happen if the Liberals are defeated this year.
It will be interesting to see how the opposition plays the budget. I'm not sure that you can credibly have business as usual when the government is preventing key witnesses who are accused of having tampered with the prosecution to just go ahead with the budget and pretend everything's normal. So it will be interesting to see. They've promised to use, quote unquote, every toolkit that the opposition has at their disposal. We shall see what
but to Chantal's point, what do you expect them to do? Not table the budget? Not pretend that that they're governing? That they shouldn't be governing?
The government will do what the government will do. I think the opposition, though, has an opportunity to make the point that this is not business as usual. We are not going to play along and just pretend that this issue is just a sidelight. Sure. It's an incredibly important issue if the government of the day is going to be monkeying around with a criminal prosecution.
Last word to you.
I guess if you're asking, can Bill Morneau save the government from and reverse the polls? I don't think so. I think by now the issue is squarely onto the Prime Minister, and that's why the narrative of the SNC-Lavalin endures. It's not because everyone wants to hear everyone. I know Andrew does, but it's because it has cast doubts as to the character of the Prime Minister as he is about to ask for another mandate.
Right, but can the budget, in terms of defining him and his leadership, can it do that? Forget Bill Morneau. We've all agreed what his limitations are, but can he do that himself?
The only budget that I've ever seen that has done that was the 95 Paul Martin budget, because it was a watershed budget, not a goody pre-election budget, and I don't think that budget is going to be a structurally watershed budget.
The combination of throwing goodies at people while stonewalling on this issue is not a good one.
I think what it really comes down to is this, what kind of society do we live in, and what kind do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a society where if you have enough wealth and enough connections to the government, you can essentially side-skirt the law? Or do we agree that we are all, are we all subject to the law as it is written? And I don't think that, regardless budget or not, we can really get away from that conversation.
Okay, got to leave it there. Thanks, everybody. Before we go, be sure to subscribe to At Issue, the podcast, for extra content this week. Maybe you guys don't know this yet, but we're going to talk about the NDP strategy for Quebec. You probably do. Ahead of the election, look for it on iTunes, any major podcast app, our website, cbcnews.ca/thenational.
And just ahead, Mueller 101. What to expect when the special counsel finishes his investigation.
The big question is, will we see everything that Mueller finds? Probably not. Let's go over how this could all go down.
But first, a peek at something coming your way this weekend. Renowned songwriter, producer David Foster will be honored at the Junos. He and I had a chance to meet and talk about that, but also about his rather large Rolodex of A-list talent spanning decades. Here's a preview of our Sunday interview.
Roll playback.
What did you think when you saw that?
Well, what I thought specifically was that I was an incredible taskmaster and control freak, is what I got out of watching myself on tape. I made Neil Young sing at least 13 times, one line. I mean, he must have wanted to kill me.
Somehow our innocence is lost.
A little flat on innocence, but other than that, it was great. We'll go again. Huh? One more time.
Somehow our... That's my sound, man.
That's my sound. Like, in other words, I'm done with you.
Joining me now, the band leader from Late Night with David Letterman, Paul Schaefer. Now, you were here and in Vancouver to go to the royal dinner. When you were on Late Night with Letterman last week, you were saying just before the dinner that you had to get a pair of black silk socks to go with your tuxedo. Were you able to find any?
I really had the socks. I just wanted to refer to the socks on TV. But I had them. Actually, I had to buy cufflinks, though. I forgot my cufflinks.
What was the dinner like?
It was great. It was, it was the first state dinner I've ever been to.
Did you meet?
Yes, there was a reception first with a lot of dignitaries there, and I was fortunate enough to be in the company of a chap who sort of sneaked me into the reception so that I might meet the.
You weren't in. You couldn't get in without being. Snuck in?
Well,
you crashed the thing, right?
Lee Richardson, who is the, I believe, the executive assistant to the Prime Minister, sort of got me in. He said, "Come with me. I want you to meet somebody." And the next thing I knew, I was on a, sort of a receiving line, and the Prime Minister and his wife and Prince and Princess were going down the line.
What do you do in those lines? I mean, do you really have a chance to talk with them at all, or is it just sort of a lot of nodding and hello, how are you?
Well, you speak very briefly. This is what happened. I thought that if I was ever going to get to meet Prince and Princess of Wales, there would be somebody. Don't you always hear that there's going to be somebody to brief you on what the proper protocol? There was nobody, of course. Just Lee. He said, "Come in, come with me," and there I was. And then he was gone, and I said, "What do I call him?" And he just called back. He said, "Your Highness," and he was gone. Okay, so at least I knew that. And then the last person I spoke to on the phone before I left New York was Eric Clapton, who I know a little bit, and he was in town recording, and called me up, and he said he'd heard on the show. He said, "I hear you're going to Vancouver to meet the royals." I said, "Yeah." I said, "What should I do?" He said, "Well, whatever you do, don't speak to them first if you get to meet them. They speak first, then you speak." Okay, so that words of Eric Clapton were ringing in my mind, and all of a sudden there's Prince Charles, and nobody knows who I am, because Lee Richardson was gone.
Did you have a name tag on or anything?
No.
Nothing. All right, so you're standing there.
So I'm standing there, he's standing there. So I didn't know what to do, so I broke protocol. I spoke first. I said, "Hello, Your Highness. I'm Paul Schaefer. I'm the musical director of the David Letterman late night TV show." He says, "Oh, really? How late?" So I said, 12:30. He says, "Well, count me out." And that was my conversation with Prince Charles.
Now, with Lady Princess Diana, were you able to?
Just a brief. Again, I introduced myself.
No.
And, she said, "How do you do?" And
do you ever feel like the Ed McMahon of the '80s? Didn't you? I mean, being a sidekick.
I guess I'm asking for it. There I am. I'm in that spot. I'm like Ed and Doc combined, I guess. I never thought I'd end up that way at such a young age, but I don't know. What am I going to say?
But you're having a good time. You're having a good time.
I'm having a terrific time. My job is to be supportive of David, to give him something to play off, to try to be spontaneous with him. It's terrific. It's an ideal job for me. I got a cute little band. I get to play all my favorite songs, whatever I want to play, and I get to talk on television and converse with David in a very spontaneous manner. I think it's terrific.
You guys friends?
Yeah, we're friends.
Yeah.
We don't hang out extensively, but every once in a while we get together.
It's a great show again.
Thanks.
And congratulations. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
See? Zip, zip. Now there's a shorter pants.
What will they think of next? Hopefully nothing.
There's a combo, shorts and the pants, what I call ports.
Well, clearly you like them, and that's the important thing.
You want payback. I'm how you get it.
It's not enough. I did not expect to get a shot at the king.
Street Legal, Mondays on CBC.
The yeas are 420. The nays are 0.
A rare bipartisan vote in the U.S. House of Representatives today. Democrats and Republicans voted unanimously in favor of a resolution calling for special counsel Robert Mueller's report into Russia election meddling to be made public. The vote isn't binding and it was quickly blocked by the Senate, but it does represent growing pressure on the Justice Department to be transparent when the report is finally released. The CBC's Matt Kwong explains what we can expect to learn.
The big question is, will we see everything that Mueller finds? Probably not. Let's go over how this could all go down. The special counsel will submit his report to his boss, Attorney General William Barr. This will be a confidential document. Barr gets to decide what to share with the public and what to tell Congress. He says he'll be as transparent as possible, quote, consistent with the law. So some wiggle room. Even if Barr does decide to release the full report to the public, don't expect it to be dictionary-sized. It won't be as sprawling as independent counsel Ken Starr's 445-page Whitewater report, in which he revealed President Bill Clinton's extramarital affair. Current regulations only require Mueller to lay out investigatory paths he took and to explain declinations, decisions his team made to not bring charges against someone. That would be a bare bones report. He could simply list people he indicted and say there was no probable cause for indictable offenses in any other cases. A comprehensive narrative report could be another way to go, but Mueller is so straight-laced that he'll likely hand in something more understated. Whatever we learn is up to Barr. Once he has Mueller's report, Barr must notify Congress. But he doesn't have to share everything. It might be a summary leaving out classified intelligence. Barr's summary must reveal any conflicts between Mueller's team and the Justice Department overseeing Mueller's work. For example, suppose Mueller wanted to subpoena Deutsche Bank to look into Trump's business dealings. If Mueller's boss said no, Congress would have to know about that rejection. Will the report indict anyone close to Trump? Barr says he's bound by Justice Department policies. One policy says you don't release reports about people you aren't charging with a crime. Let's say Mueller uncovers something unsavory about Trump or his family members. Unless that activity meets the threshold of proof that the law was broken, there will be no charges. That means the president's name might not even be mentioned in the report. Justice Department guidelines also say you can't indict a sitting president. What if Trump or anyone close to him isn't indicted and Barr doesn't explain why? That won't sit well with Congress. New investigations could get more aggressive, and lawmakers could subpoena Mueller to testify. Remember, Congress is now gearing up for its own probes. Already, those probes are looking not just into Russia, but allegations of corruption, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power by Trump and his administration. And Mueller could still hand off key cases to other federal prosecutors, allowing those probes to live on for years after Mueller's team dissolves. So if you thought the Trump probes were nearly over, think again. Matt Kwong, CBC News, Washington.
Our moment is on the way. Here's a taste of what's to come. Who's happier in this scene, the dog or the owner?
Whoa! Who's here? Whoa! Whoa! Look who we found!
Aw, but first. In case you missed it, vindication and compensation for the hundreds of people who endured their own private Ides of March 2 years ago. They were betrayed by a jackknifing tractor trailer on frozen Highway 13 in Montreal. It caused a massive pileup in the middle of a snowstorm, which did not trigger a rapid and coordinated response. It was, in fact, a total logistical nightmare, forcing many people to spend the night in their cars and triggering a class action lawsuit against the province and the city of Montreal, which provincial authorities have now settled with payouts ranging from $350 to about $1,000, with bonuses in some cases.
For a person who was stuck between 4 and 6 hours, would get $500, and if they were, for example, pregnant, then that person who was stuck for 4 to 6 hours would get an increase of 25%, which would mean $625.
Marlene Berman endured a night in the cold back in 2017.
It was a really fortunate incident for them that no one froze to death. People were running out of gas. It was cold. It was -12. It could easily have been -40.
She's very happy with Quebec's decision and hopes Montreal will follow suit.
We are your constituents. There will be another election.
Hey, never underestimate the political memory of voters once forced to sleep in their cars.
Push record. They figured out that 2/3 of Canadian households now have a video cassette recorder. I guess a lot of people use them just to play back movies that they rent. However, once you can figure it out and record programs, a lot of people use them for that as well. There is a Japanese company, though, that has designed a VCR which will not only record the show you want, but it will do it without the commercials.
Joining me now from Calgary to explain this technology is our regular columnist, Tom Keenan. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Ralph.
All right, this sounds too good to be true. It's something, I mean, it's one thing to have a muting button so you don't have to hear a commercial, but to actually delete them, how does this work?
Well, it's pretty clever. They make use of the fact that the networks in Japan send out a signal, an electronic signal, to
change over from the Japanese movies, which tend to have both the English and Japanese soundtracks on the 2 stereo channels, into the commercials, which have to be just in Japanese so everybody gets them. And that signal can be detected by the video recorder. So what it does is it just stops recording when it sees a commercial. Then when you get back to the real program, it picks it up again.
But here in North America, we don't have that situation. I mean, will they be able to use one of these here, or?
No, the Japanese one definitely would not work in North America. There's no question about that. However, there is a signal. It's a little Q button, a little Q light that goes on in the corner. CBC uses it, for example, to alert the local stations when a commercial is coming up. And there's some controversy about whether or not somebody could build a video recorder to detect that. You know, one idea is you could just maybe find that part of the television picture that sends that little flashing Q dot and do the same thing here. Nobody's tried to do that yet, though.
All right, let's go back to the Japanese model for a second. I can't imagine that the average corporate sponsor is going to roll over and play dead, faced with the idea that you could negate their commercials.
Well, for starters, you have to think about, some people say, well, gee, you know, so what? I'm watching the program live and I'm seeing the commercials. Why should I have to put them on the tape? The answer, of course, is that lots of people, particularly in Japan, use the video recorder as a time shifter. Now, I used to do this. I wanted to watch the evening news and I would get home late, so I just set the old video recorder up and I'd watch it whenever I got home. Japanese tend to love technology. When I was over there, I saw this vending machine that sold bouquets of flowers. I mean, like $50 bouquets of flowers, and the robot arm hands it to you. So you have to think about these guys sitting over there thinking, okay, great, we never have to watch commercials again. We'll just record things. If you do that, of course, you cut out the revenue. That's what pays for television, commercial revenue. And yeah, the advertisers were going nuts about it.
Why aren't I depressed about this? I mean, there's a sense of warfare going on now. I get the sense that people at home really don't want to be bombarded with commercials anymore. Commercial advertisers are saying, hey, no us, no TV. And there doesn't seem to be a common ground for them to stand on. Are we going to see this cat and mouse game of technologies and the rest of it just jumping around until somebody wins this battle?
Yeah, my own prediction is that probably somebody will pick up this idea in North America. I'm told that there was an article a few years ago in one of the electronics magazines telling you how to build one of these things in your own basement lab to go out there and cut out commercials. And what it comes down to is, how can you detect commercials? If the network sends you a signal, it's pretty easy. Maybe there are other ways. Some people say the commercials are piped up at a higher volume.
They are.
I'm going to go out and find you 3 businesses.
Beautiful.
This is scaring me a little bit.
I am ready for a change. What kind of business are you interested in?
Things to do with kids.
Car service.
A neighborhood pub.
Run a B&B.
How much money do you want to invest?
I'm most excited about being my own boss.
Can you guys see yourselves doing this every day?
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Which business do you want to buy?
We landed on... I'm planning to...
I'm leaning towards...
Under New Management, Friday at 8:30 on CBC.
Well, imagine this good boy was your dog, and then imagine him disappearing from your backyard one evening. That's what a family from Kelowna, BC, went through this past weekend. But not long after word got out on social media that Atlas had disappeared, he was found, and the big family reunion was really something. Overjoyed does not even begin to describe it, and that is our moment of the day.
Whoa! Who's here?
Just overwhelmed with joy. It's a natural reaction when Atlas and I don't see each other for a long period of time. It's like a happy cry from him, and there was tears of joy for sure.
It was a relief that I was worried where the dog was. Was he being taken care of?
When we brought him home, he ate 2 full bowls of dog food. You could tell that he was extremely hungry.
Once he got home, we felt like $1 million.
It was the best feeling.
People were waiting here, and it became like a block party, and he was just running wild. Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
So obviously, we all ask the same question. Who steals a dog that adorable? Well, apparently it was a woman who did the dog napping, and I guess they are looking for her now.
Yeah, police don't know a whole lot more than that. But you know, besides being confusing, this crime was also quite brazen, right? It didn't happen at 3 or 4 in the morning. It happened at 7:30 in the evening. So presumably there might have been lots of people around, but it was the surveillance footage that caught the act in progress, so to speak, and then eventually once it was posted on social media, those tips just came pouring in. But as we said, still no culprit just yet.
Let me just raise the curtain around our newsroom. Some people wonder about, what is the process, about decisions that we make to put in the news. when given an array of stories, potentially for the moment, dogs win out every time, right? Like around our editorial table, our senior producer, Kate, now is just a puddle of emotion in the control room. She was pushing for this more than anybody, and it was an awfully cute story. What a nice way to end the National for this Thursday, March 14th. Good night.
Good night.
Night.